Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of our Dungeon Boss Hero Spotlight. Today we're taking a look at a double episode. We're going to be looking at both Selwyn the Enduring as well as Lady Nimriel the Elf. We're going to take a look at both of their hero upgrades as well as their epics that have been, Nimriel's had her epic for a while, but Selwyn has an epic that is just released. We're going to be taking a look at both of them, see how they fare compared to what they used to, where they stand now, if they're going to make it into anybody's rotation, if they're viable, and so on and so forth. So we're going to start with Selwyn because he is the most changed because he does have an epic where Nimriel already had her epic. If we look at him to start with, first things that come to mind is anytime there's a hero revamp, there's usually a change to skills. In most cases, these abilities have not really changed that much. The biggest thing that I see with Selwyn, which is a huge breath of fresh air, is his energy cost has roughly been cut in half. In days long past and up until now, Selwyn's energy use was amongst the top. I think aside from Emily with her 25 counter for the revive, Selwyn was the highest cost energy person in the entire game at a whopping 23. So everything was like 7, 7, and then 9. It was absurd. So we have a much more manageable set of skills, especially because he was so useless. Having such high energy cost was just a total waste, where we had someone like Valken who was really awesome and had very low energy costs. So because he was so poor, I would have expected his energy to be a lot better, but it's much better now. His overall abilities have not changed that much. He still starts out with Northern Gale. Nothing really changes there, which is a reasonable freeze attack. It is only a chance to freeze, so you cannot guarantee it. But for the most part, if you have a decent amount of skill, I've found that this sticks more often than not. Chilling Blast does not really have any differences. I do believe this dealing extra damage to frozen targets is new for this ability. So if you happen to get on a Shatter team, if you plan on using Igorok or Ice Bloom, for example, it's possible that you can double up on some damage here. I don't know that there's going to be many teams like that viable to really utilize this ability, but it is there for you to use. And lastly, which is probably, I don't know, his most useful one, at least so far in PvP for me, has been this one here, the Frost Barrage, because it gains 69% attack for water allies. My particular team that I'm using right now has Grognog on it, and any extra attack for Grognog is always a good thing. So, as far as his stat loadout goes, he did get some nice upgrades. I don't remember the exact percents. I didn't look them up specifically. His attack now is 1334 base, which is actually very good. It seems very low, but remember we went through a combat revamp, and a lot of the initial stats went way down because of the way the calculations took place, but ultimately come back up after you start factoring things in. So that 1334, yeah, it looks pretty awful compared to in the old days when we saw people with base around 2000. This here actually is the highest of all the water casters. Obviously, there's not a lot of water casters right now, but compared to Ice Bloom only had 1200 some. So when we ultimately look at how does this attack stack up to everybody else, there's really only one benchmark as far as caster attacks. And he's at the top of pretty much everybody's hero roster, Mr. Shade. Shade's attack base 1418. So compare that to the 1330 that Selwyn has, and he's way up there as far as base attack goes. Plus, he is also a caster, so he gets the mystical trait, so he gets extra damage versus slow and tanks. So as far as the stat buff goes, he is doing what a caster is supposed to do, and that's pump out a lot of damage. So that's pretty refreshing there. The downside to Selwyn as far as that damage buff goes is this little number here, and that's his rune loadout. Because he is a water caster, he has 2 blues and a yellow, which makes it impossible for him to even get anywhere close to what Shade would have. You saw my Shade had over 10,000 attack. There's no way Selwyn can even get close to that. It's just impossible because of the rune loadout. So that being said, you're going to be better off with balance as far as Selwyn goes, because he's going to function more so as a utility player than a heavy damage dealer. You're going to use him for a little bit of crowd control on the Northern Gale. You're going to use him for the attack buff on his third ability. He's not going to be that guy who's going to be doing cleanup duty like a lot of people maybe had hoped for. It's just not going to happen, sorry to say. Other than that, his defense, likely negligible. He is a caster, so he's going to be pretty squishy. He's not armored or anything like that, but he does have a fun new mechanic that actually lets you play with him in PvP, and I found it quite useful so far, and that is this ice block. So fun fact about the ice block is you cannot get into ice block at all outside of his normal routine, just starting with it, with the exception of his epic. So this is similar to, if you didn't have his epic, it's similar to what we see with Echo, where he's got a little first round protection, and then after that, it's all bets are off. He's fair game for anybody. This ice block, as far as this damage reduction goes, is pretty legit. I've seen Selwyn take hits from the absolute most potent of people, and he's taken it all and gotten his first turn off without much of a problem. So it's definitely a good little defense there. I've seen it doesn't seem to block or add defense per se, because I've seen really powerful Agnons drop a big shot on him, and his he's not getting one shot by Agnon's terror drop or whatever it's called. So it must do something as far as damage reduction, have some built-in damage reduction of very, very, very high percent. Like I said, his defense is likely negligible, partially because his max health does start out fairly low. So if you're going to build him as far as a utility hero, you're likely going to have to mix in a combination of attack, defense, and health. My personal recommendation for this is, with his rune loadout, is use your blue and yellows for your damage reduction. Throw some bulwarks and some damage reduction, or some Aegis runes on there for the layman's term, and then take your purple and red and either put those as hardcore attack power runes, or use some of those utility runes like the incineration rune or the corruption rune to add in some status effects. Remember, he's not going to be the guy that's dealing tons of damage, so having extra little help as far as status ailments is certainly going to be pretty handy. So let's take a look at his epic. His epic is a defense, attack, health, similar to what we saw with Hopper. So this basically screams right from the start that this is a well-balanced hero and not something you're going to pour all of your efforts into attack. This epic is going to be a 30-20-20, so you get some really nice boost to all of his stats. He will be up there in terms of his base stats amongst with the best. That, like I said, with his rune loadout, he's not going to be amongst the best of the best, because he is a squishy caster and he doesn't have the potency as far as attack goes, but he will be up there and a little bit more survivable and get his first turn off. That's the main thing right now. So I have not actually seen his epic yet, not even in other screenshots or videos, so this will be a first for me. I actually always kind of liked his character model. He always reminded me kind of like Gandalf, except for if Gandalf were blue hat. So I've always liked him. I'm guessing he's just getting a weapon upgrade as opposed to someone like Torchy or Hopper. So he upgrades his staff into a little ice staff similar to Ice Bloom, I guess. Kind of cool. Doesn't change anything to his base character model, so he doesn't really lose too much there. So kind of nice, but not anything too spectacular. Now, because I am not fully on the Selwyn train yet, I don't know what's going to be happening long term. I'm not going to pour a ton of resources into actually upgrading him, so I will take him as far as the next phase goes, and I probably won't do much more of this, at least not on video. So on to the actual epic effect. So this was where we got into the fun fact before, where it has that ice block. So it's a chance to do 3 times damage and frostbite. Notice it's not a chance to frostbite, it is legitimate frostbite. And then he enters in ice block. So the nice thing about Selwyn is if you're using him in PvP right now, which a lot of people are because of the event, myself included, you're going to always have those turns where you don't have abilities up. PvP defense, he's likely to be dead before this comes into play, unless he's got some serious protection from the likes of Taunters or somebody like Gortusk, who's just doing tons of damage reduction. So they're going to go 3 turns without actually dealing any type of basic attack. So if you want to get into ice block, you do have that potential chance, which could keep him around another turn, possibly open up for the Northern Gale to hit again. Depends on what sort of team you have and what sort of energy recovery you have. The team that I'm using now does have a little energy mechanic. I think it does. Maybe it doesn't. We'll get to that in a little bit here. But as far as viability goes, at least during this event, I will be honest, he has been fairly viable. He's survived enough so that just out of in the interest of demonstration here, just to prove that he is out there. If we look at the event quests right now, we look at Nimriel and Selwyn dominance. I am on 3 of 10 for both. That means I've completed and successfully won 9 total raids with both Selwyn and Nimriel. So they can actually survive. Now, I'm not going around attacking those Solaris, Lily, Grognard, Gortus teams. I'm certainly not doing that, but it's certainly better than what you'd expect in terms of them just dying on the first turn and being absolutely useless. So they are viable, but keep in mind heroes are buffed right now. Once that event buff goes away, that's likely not going to hold up quite as much. So take it with a grain of salt, but they're at least useful right now. The runes that I have on him, I'll be honest, I did not put the best runes on him because I didn't have a lot of faith in him. So I threw the sort of some of the best I had left. Most of them are just graders. So we have an Aegis, Champion, a Tactics, Aegis, and another Champion. So mine is mostly defensive. I didn't have any good offensive runes for him. If I switch this up, he probably will deal a little bit more damage in PvP, but even with it as it is, notice his stats don't go up that much. I'm more interested in max health right now. But that's kind of where he is. So definitely play around with him. He's probably going to be much more useful at lower levels for those people that don't have Igorok or Ice Bloom or Valken, who don't have any type of a freezing hero. So he's going to be available right out of the gate for most people, and he's going to be helpful, and he might even be one of the first epics you get to level 50. So like I said, I don't know that he's going to make it long-term into the PvP meta, but it certainly is a welcome change to his overall performance. So he is going to be one of the stronger casters, but with his rune loadout, he is going to be limited a little bit. Looking at his other traits, I didn't really mention these other traits here. He does have a Cyclone Barrier, which reflects half of range damage. This is only ranged attacks, but it reflects half of it back. It's nice for those people that are really coming in with some high potency attacks, like I think Koros is technically ranged. Some of the ones with Furno is going to light this guy up no matter what. So reflecting some of that back is pretty good. Reflecting Shade back is a good one too. Just a way to deal a little bit of extra damage even if he's going to get killed off. The rest of the stuff we saw, this was the Ice Block, and this one here is just his energy mechanics. So this is what I was talking about with his energy usage. I had been using Ponti a little bit to gain some energy back, but I can't justify Ponti right now with the particular teams. I don't know that he's strong enough to hold up to really any of the defense meta right now. Okay, you're going to have to take my word about the epic proc. I'm not going to actually show that on video because I'm not going to run through dungeons just to see that come up. It's just a singular attack and it puts him in Ice Block mode. Nothing overly special. Moving on now to Lady Nimriel. Nimriel, if we look at her stat sheet, she got some upgrades as well, but her epic largely remains the same. Base attack of 1295, lower than what Selwyn was, so she's a little bit weaker. Base defense is also fairly low as well. That's right around on par where Selwyn was. And max health, because she's an elf and light, is also fairly low as well. So as far as her changes go, she actually got some really great upgrades. I don't know that that is also going to make her any better, but she too has been viable in PvP right now with the event buffs and with her current changes. There's a couple things that I really like about her right now that are really, they show signs of promise as far as after this event ends. First one is this one here, Elven Grace. It takes significantly less damage from crits. I don't know what significantly less means, if that means that they take their normal damage but they really don't take any of the crit damage, or if it re-rolls the damage altogether, and if it's a critical attack it severely limits it. I don't really know what the mechanic is there. My guess is they'll still take normal damage, but that extra 50% will likely not do much, or that extra 100%, the double damage. But what I'm most interested in here is the double damage to flying enemies because of the Solaris out there. She's magical, so she takes less damage from non-physical. Nothing's really changed there. This one here, all allies ranged physical attacks have a chance to burn. That's nice, but you have to have people that use ranged. So most of the time it's just Solaris for a lot of people. My team right now, there's not a lot of ranged attacks. I am using Selwyn, so he does have that chance, but it's got to be a physical attack. Next up, Adds attacks against burning targets can't be dodged, so if you do have somebody that's a little bit shifty, particularly those people like Torchy, this will help a little bit, but you do have to get burn on them first. So if they're already shifty, it might be tough to burn them in the first place. This one here is probably my favorite now. Second wind, gain 1 energy and haste after getting a killing blow. Cannot understate how awesome this is, because if you use Nimriel properly and don't waste her abilities right away, you can use her as a kill shot and get a second attack on there, especially if you're hoarding some of your abilities as far as PvP attacker goes, or if she dies in the first turn before you even get to use the first ability. This can be a nice welcome ability for you. So speaking of which, her abilities, the names have changed a little bit, but they remain largely the same. The effects have changed a little bit. Get Over Here has not changed. So this is the same as it always has been. It's the Scorpion type move where she brings them over there, punches them, and then they get dazed. That's always been the same. Deals extra damage to flying. Now, what I haven't tested out in general is if this is on top of the passive for dealing more damage to flying. I believe it is. I didn't get a chance to really look at the on-screen numbers to see if it shows one for extra damage to flying, another one for extra damage to flying. So it should be a double dose here where this ability does double damage as well as her passive to do double damage. So realistically, this here should do some serious damage to Solaris because it should technically do 4 times the damage. And for that reason, I did put some really strong runes on her just to try and test that out, because if one person's going to make it out of this event and possibly into the new meta or the existing meta, it's probably going to be her over Selwyn, just because she has the ability to take on Solaris and mitigate that earlier rather than later. Deadly Barrage really is just a rehash of one of her other AoE abilities, which she had. Nothing has really changed. The big difference here is the chance to wound. Wounding is a pretty cool effect, but against those beast teams, at this point here, Solaris would have already done her cleanse, so this would be nice, but it's likely that one would come around, and ultimately she'll probably cleanse again. The last one is a purging one. So this phosphorus arrow does a physical attack that purges all buffs. This is also a good one to do against Solaris. It doesn't say specifically, but I believe this is kind of a fire-based attack. I could have swore I did this one against Solaris, and it didn't do any damage to her, but it did purge her current buffs. So you'll have to keep an eye on this one. So even though it doesn't say it's a fire-based attack, but I feel like it might be. Even looking at the tooltip, it's definitely a fire arrow, and obviously a phosphorus arrow is one that's going to be on fire as well. The overall event tooltip did say that there was a change to her epic. I don't know what that was because I never really used it in the first place. If you look at hers, I had her up to level 5 and never went back to her because she wasn't that useful for me. Her epic is defense, health, skill. This is also going to be a 30-20-20. Her effect is to attack a target. I believe it says 2 times damage, but it's actually 2 attacks. So it's not just 2 times the damage. Bonus damage for each debuff on the targets. That's what I'm guessing is probably the change here. So if you're using a debuff heavy team, this is actually going to be pretty good. Again, this is going to be sort of like with Selwyn. You're going to have turns in there on PvP offense where you ultimately have downtime between abilities. You're going to be using basic attacks. So the runes that I put on her to try and survive a little bit, we got some attack runes. Superior one, attack, crit, plus damage penetration. We got a pair of those. I had these from a different event. I never really equipped them on anyone else. Another duelist, attack, skill, more damage penetration. We have the Guardian rune for a little bit of extra buff. And then we have a defense one for a little bit of damage reduction. So a little bit of balance, a little bit of extra attack. So we've gotten a good look at what the changes have been, what these sort of stat upgrades are. I didn't really touch the stats on her too much. I don't have her notes up as far as what her original stats were. But we could see that her base attack of 1295 is right on par with almost with Selwyn, which makes her a pretty high base attack, which is going to make her pretty useful. So ultimately, what it's going to come down to in terms of PvP is going to be your team management and who you're actually attacking. I'm going to show you what I've been using recently. I've been using the same team, win or lose. I've been using it to try and milk some points in the event. And that is, sorry, I got to claim this first. The team that I'm using, I'm doubling up to try and make the best of it. It's probably not the smartest thing. It's probably going to be more successful if I just chose Selwyn or Nimriel. But I've been kind of picking on people that didn't look like they were fully stacked up. Like this one here, I feel like I can probably take on. And I've been using this team here. Order is really up to you. Most of the teams that I'm going against have Grognog, so the order doesn't matter anyways. They all get slowed down. But we got Grognog and Solaris there for a little bit of extra support as far as just staying alive long enough to do anything. But for the most part, like I said, I've won more than I've lost. So out of, let's see, I've won 9 with these. I probably lost about 4. So a 9-4 record with using 2 heroes that are definitely not the meta is not too bad. And that's largely going to come down to picking proper opponents. The ones that I've lost were because I couldn't refresh without losing the streak. But I have gotten up to a 4 streak with this team already. So it can win, and it can win in chunks. But you do have to know how to play it a little bit. I've found that a lot of things just require a little bit of micromanaging how you manage your attacks. So especially going against Solaris teams, I know a lot of people want to kill her as soon as possible, but a pro tip with dealing with Solaris is let her sacrifice herself with her engulfing flames. That's when you're really going to put the hurt on people. So if you can get by with that, definitely try to let her sacrifice herself. So it's always nice to have that little bit of mitigation there of the first turn. Obviously, these guys are going to catch up in the long run, so it doesn't really matter who we go after because Solaris is going to res them eventually anyways, unless we get really lucky. So I've been usually attacking Zom, partially because the Zoms that I've been attacking, these minions have been absolutely brutal, especially to both Selwyn and Nimriel. They just cannot stand attack after attack after attack. All right, so we're gonna leave this as it is because we're gonna use this combined with Grognog. That's another one of the things that I always pair Grognog and Solaris together for the Snow Day buff. So provided she stays alive, she does die quite a bit. So with Grognog getting free reign to do what he wants, but Zama's definitely gonna die, so that's a good thing. Downside to this is to slow the team, so Solaris isn't going to be able to do her Phoenix Feather, so the purge that I do with my Solaris is going to be kind of wasted a little bit. So I'm just going to take her on here. Always kill Solaris when you can. She's going to revive, but at least she's not going to revive and bring Grognog back with her. So definitely go that route. Alright, let's purge some buffs. The really only thing that you want to purge this for is because of Grognog. You don't want him doing that AoE freeze. It sucks too much. But now at this part here, because we're down to just 2 of them, we're going to throw all of our attacks on Grognog. And then what's going to happen is she will almost always do Engulfing Flames before she does Immolating Fire. Which means all we have to do is just keep Grognog alive, she'll sacrifice herself, and then we put the hurt on her. So as long as Grognog doesn't die, we're actually sitting good. So now we're getting down to the point where I don't want to attack Grognog because I don't want any sort of a rogue critical attack to take him out. So that gave me probably 1 free attack back or so. And I feel like I can go with 1 attack here. There we go. So that's basically what we want. So now she's going to do Engulfing Flames eventually, and then Grognog is toast. There's nothing he can do. This is the quote-unquote pro tip when dealing with these types of teams. This is kind of a bummer here because I feel like... It's not a bummer because I'll probably kill them both. There we go. So we're good. So, another win for this particular team. Like I said, if you take all of your best runes and throw them on both of those 2, you can get by in PvP with these 2 and score some points for your guild. So, we're going to leave it at that. We're already closing in close to a half hour, so I'm not going to go any further. As far as both of these heroes go, within this event, they're both fairly viable. They can win matches for you, so they're definitely useful. We won't know long-term prognosis of these 2 until we get outside of this event and see what sort of stuff they can do with some other teams. So I've only had 1 day to see what it is, but we'll definitely circle back around to it in the future as we start seeing these guys more and more. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let me know, and then we can go forward from there. I'll answer as best as I can, or else throw it out to my guild for extra guidance there. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and we will see you again next time. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting my channel. If you like this video, please show your continued support by hitting that like button, and be sure to check out both my YouTube channels for new content all the time. And always remember, peace is a lie, there's only passion. We'll see you next time.